Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Earn It podcast. Today is Monday, April 21st, and on today's episode, we're going to go over how to battle and get yourself out of burnout. Okay, so burnout is obviously a really big issue, and it can hit you at any time and without warning. So it doesn't matter even if you're only a few weeks into your first semester of nursing school or you're in your last few weeks of your last semester of nursing school. But this does typically tend to hit in this somewhere around the second half of any semester of nursing school. And it tends to be more intense every time that it happens, right? So in your first semester, you'll go through it towards the end, and your second, it's going to be a little worse than your first, and then the third, and so on and so forth. And, it's really tough to deal with because our demands throughout nursing school do not decrease generally. They generally are constantly increasing, and just when they start to decrease in terms of maybe schoolwork getting a little lighter, or there's no lectures one week, then there's just more exams, or it's time for you to be buckling down and studying for your NCLEX, scheduling your NCLEX. There's a lot of things that you need to do in order to get your license ready. A bunch of things have to happen very quickly and at the same time. So this is going to be an episode on what are you supposed to do? These are some methods. These are some tips and tricks that could work to help and get you out of it. So, and this is in no particular order. This is just a bunch of random stuff that you could do. So the first thing is that you need to, at least temporarily, shift your mindset from perfection mindset to a progress mindset. What that means is, chances are, this may not be you, but a lot of folks that are in nursing school, or especially are towards the end of a semester, are trying to do the best that they can possibly do. And one of two things are happening. Either you've been really trying hard, and you are able to get at least the kind of grades and the test scores that you have been wanting to get, or better, or you are trying really hard to get extremely high scores, and you're consistently not doing as good as you want to do, whether that be slightly lower or whether that be failing or close to failing. And so it doesn't matter which one of those it is. The fact of it is, you have some kind of goal in your head. It's either realistic or it's not realistic. No matter what scenario you're in, it's either realistic or not. You're either hitting those goals or you're not hitting those goals. If you're not hitting those goals, you're getting worn down because you're not hitting them, even though you're trying really hard. And if you are hitting those goals, well, you begin to kind of rationalize the ability to try less hard and do less work as time moves on, because you have less of a chance of kind of messing up your grade or your situation. You might get to a point where no matter what, basically, even if you fail a test, you're still going to pass and move on. And towards the end, when you know for sure, like, oh, what this means is I'm already through to the next round. This can be hard to deal with for that reason, or just because you are tired of trying to achieve such a high kind of goalpost. So what you need to do is stop trying to hit that goal for a short time. Take it for 1 week, maybe. Say, you know what? I am going to allow myself to try less hard. In other words, you don't need to ace everything. You need to pass and preserve your sanity. You have to ask yourself, is this good enough to move forward? And if it is, then you need to keep it moving and not try to be a perfectionist, because when you're going through burnout, you probably don't feel like, if you're listening to this and you're kind of a perfectionist and you're listening to this wanting to know how to get over your burnout, what you might be doing right now is you might not be trying hard already. You might already be not executing the way that you have been executing. The thing about it is, when push comes to shove, you know that you haven't been trying as hard, and you didn't give yourself permission to do it to begin with. So there's a sense of guilt and a sense of something is wrong because you're not doing what you were doing and you didn't give yourself permission to do so. And you still have that same goal in mind. So what's going to happen is, even though it's towards the end, it's the day or 2 days or 3 days, whatever it is before an exam or a big assignment is due, you haven't been trying hard. Well, if you have that goal in mind still, you are going to power through, and you are going to make up for lost time. And that is going to further wear you out and get you even more burned out. So even if you're inadvertently giving yourself a temporary break, you need to at least make sure that there's two aspects to this. One, you're giving yourself permission to temporarily try less hard. And B, you have to just continue that. In other words, whenever it's go time, okay, I have 2 days left to study for this exam, you need to be okay with less of a result, and you need to be okay with passing with a good grade. That's good enough to pass and moving on, especially if you're talking about towards the end here, and you know that you can't possibly fail. You know, either way, you're going to move forward, right? Now, if you haven't been doing as well, you need to give yourself permission to not strive. You need to set the bar a little lower. It may not even change your efforts. But the point is, when you're constantly trying to work towards something and not achieving it, then you have the opposite of satisfaction whenever you get that end result. And that accelerates burnout. You're at a burnout for a different reason than the previous folks I was talking about. The second thing that you should do is microdose your energy. Some of you may have started out doing this, or may have told yourself that you were going to do this, but once you saw the sheer amount of workload necessary for whatever semester of nursing school you're in, at whatever nursing school you're in, you thought to yourself, this is not going to work. I'm talking about the Pomodoro method. I am personally a fan of this only half the time. I cannot consistently do this myself. But if you're someone who does not use the Pomodoro method, then you should try it if you're dealing with burnout. Here is the formula for this. You're going to do 25 minutes of focused study. You're going to, by the way, use alarms on your phone for all of this. And do not touch your phone during these focused study periods. Don't scroll. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb. This is absolutely zero interruptions. If you have kids running around, if it's an emergency, then deal with it. Otherwise, move forward with it. You're going to have to force yourself to do it. 25 minutes of focused study. Then you're going to take a 5-minute break. You are going to set a timer for this 5-minute break. You are going to repeat this for a total of 4 times. So 25-5. 25-5, 25-5, 25-5. Now you're going to take a 20-minute break. Basically, studying, even schoolwork, is not a marathon. If you happen to get into the groove, that's fine. If you get into a flow state, that's fine. You can't forcefully put yourself in the flow state. You might know what kind of things generally put you in a flow state, but it's not guaranteed that if you meet all those criteria that's going to happen. So the Pomodoro method means that you are actually getting breaks throughout the day. And by breaks, I don't mean going and looking at your flashcards for 5 minutes on your phone in between times doing your paper. That's probably what got you to burnout. A lot of people told themselves that they're going to do this, or they heard Pomodoro a long time ago, and they heard some other method of it, whether it's study for 20 minutes, take a break for 20. There's all kinds of different time intervals that you might have heard that are not correct. Again, you might have thought that you could do this and you might have started to do it and discovered that it's not okay for you to do this for the workload. Well, here's the thing. It actually is. The issue with doing this in the beginning of nursing school or the beginning of a new semester at nursing school is that you feel like you won't get things done if you take those 5-minute breaks and those 20-minute breaks. You're feeling like during these 5 minutes, during these 20 minutes, there's something that I could be doing, right? So that's kind of the issue. That's kind of what got you here. I assure you that if you're experiencing severe burnout, you're not doing this consistently. So again, don't marathon study. Your brain is already fried. You need to think about sprints instead of marathons. Now, the third thing is generally a little bit trickier. You're going to prioritize high yield content. You are going to focus on what's most likely to be tested or used in clinical, and you're going to not worry about anything else. If you're in the beginning and you are already experiencing burnout, I'm sorry to say this to you, but if you're in your first or second week of nursing school ever, if you haven't taken your first exam, you don't know what this is yet. Okay? This doesn't apply. If you are burned out before your first exam in nursing school, there's a link in the description of the podcast. Put your information in there. And if there's any of you out there that are experiencing that, I will make an episode just for you, just for the first few weeks of nursing school, sort of kind of like a survival guide. But again, this isn't for you, right? You're going to prioritize on the high yield content. There is plenty of content. This is why I'm going to kind of go over this with you. The reason why this is important is because you are quite literally, for every single exam, for every single week, you are wasting a certain amount of that time trying to remember things that you will not be tested on. You don't know with 100% certainty everything they're going to be tested on, but you can kind of tell some things, right? And you could at least take all the concepts and prioritize those things first and then get to the others. Save the others for later. You don't have to forget the fluff, but you can delay the fluff until later. That way you're using your time most efficiently. And when you're spending your time doing whatever studying that you need to, it's because it's 100% useful. And you're not really trying to, you're not just reading stuff to read it. Another aspect of this is that you need to find, NCLEX style questions in order to study a little bit more actively. Flashcards are better than rereading notes. And, answering questions is probably the best because you didn't write them. So a lot of people are like, my flashcards are important. I write them out. I go over them. Generally, flashcards are pretty customized to you, generally. And so are your notes. The thing is, to a certain extent, putting information in ways that you can understand them is very vital to that process. But then, if you study that a little bit too much and you're not actively studying that kind of same thing, what happens is you can memorize every single flashcard that you have. You can memorize every single line of every single note that you have and generally understand the concepts in the way that you understand them. But the issue is, especially with NCLEX style questions, is this is the same concepts, but it will be presented to you in such a profoundly different way that it can trip you up. This is why you need questions to study actively. The ones that Quizlet can make you which by the way, I definitely do recommend the yearly subscription for Quizlet. I think it's like $10 or something, maybe 20, I don't remember, but it's like $10 or $20 for the entire year. Maybe it's 30, I don't know. It's worth it. That's better than nothing. But as much as I personally dislike ATI, I dislike it because it's extremely difficult and I can read the section that the questions are asking from, and the information for that question is not in those paragraphs. The concept is there, but not the information. You need to get away from memorizing information, and you need to be on the more analysis side and creating side in order to really kind of 100% guarantee that you're spending your time most effectively. So prioritize the high yield content. Quick mental rituals, little reset rituals. So a lot of folks already do this. This is different from the Pomodoro method that I talked about earlier. That is very structured, and that all follows kind of strict guidelines. The time it's its own thing, but it also kind of leaves the break time, and what you do in that break time, it kind of leaves those questions unanswered. So you need to come up with 2 or 3 different. Here's how I recommend doing it. You need to come up with 3 different levels. Okay, 3 different levels. So you're going to take 60 seconds, and you're going to, I don't know, lay down. You're going to scroll through your phone for 60 seconds. You're going to do some deep breathing exercises for 60 seconds. You're going to take 5 minutes, do some stretching. You're going to go on a walk outside, right? Something like that. You're going to take 20 to 30 minutes, do a workout, have a bite to eat if you need to eat something. Get on watch an episode of a TV show, whatever it is. 3 different time intervals, and stick to those actual things and use those rituals to your advantage, right? So when you're really I really can't do this right now, don't do it right now. The only thing that you need to stick to is one of your 3 time intervals, one of your 3 mental reset rituals that I'm talking about. So that way, it's like, look, you can't do this right now. Give yourself permission to not do it, but you're going to set a time limit, and you're going to know exactly what activity you're doing. So that way you're not mindlessly scrolling and then it's already been 30 minutes and you're still looking at reels, and you can't get yourself out of that in order to get back to the task you need to do, right? So you need to come up with some mental reset rituals. And trust me, they really work. If you go on a literal 5-minute walk outside, depending on the weather, generally you come back and you're refreshed. For a lot of people, this might mean going and making a cup of coffee, and hopefully you don't have a heart attack from all the caffeine that you intake. Another kind of tip is to not go at this alone. You have other classmates, and chances are that they're feeling this too. Somebody in your class is feeling it too. If you have a Discord, if you have Facebook groups for your class, if you somehow have some kind of Teams chat with everybody, whatever it is, you know what you should do? You guys should make a little chat for Burnout, and it's all the people that are burned out, and you should all get together and vent to each other. With a commitment that you're going to do a certain activity afterwards, whether that be studying or Q&A in each other, going over flashcards, whatever it is. You guys should get together with those people that are going through the same things. And then you could share tips with one another. So you could invite some people that aren't burned out yet to this whole burnout meetup, whether it be virtual or in person. And the people who aren't burned out can share other tips and tricks, or you guys can just sit around, quiz each other, but vent first. I recommend getting together, everybody go around in a circle like a freaking support group, like it's an AA meeting or something, and you're going to vent everything out. And then afterwards, you're going to start getting something done. So it's kind of like a sense of community, keeping each other accountable. This is especially good to get to know other classmates. I know, with the amount of work that needs to take place in nursing school, there can be a lot of isolation going on, right? You could be a year and a half into your nursing program, and there's still like 10 people of your class of 30 or 40 that you don't even really know their name. And that's because you just don't have, this isn't a social club, right? There's so much stuff that everybody has to do on top of their life. So this could be a good way to get in touch with those people you don't really know much about. Also, if you're around somebody that you don't really know that well, it's going to be easy for you to, after you're done venting, getting to know each other, whatever, to jump into the studying, as opposed to you get together with a good friend, and if you guys feel like it, well, then you can just go have a drink, right? So don't go at it alone. Community helps. Another thing is that you need to visualize the finish line. Whatever the finish line is, whether it's the end of the semester, whenever graduation day is, both of those things, summer, if it's just spring break, if it's winter break, literally a holiday. What if it's Memorial Day, MLK Day? You know, you're not going to have class that day technically, even though of course they're going to give you stuff to do, but whatever. The point is, you're not going to have additional things really thrown at you that much because something. But especially if you're towards the end, you need to visualize the finish line in a very specific way. And that is, you need to put an actual countdown that you can see very easily, at least on your phone, on your calendar, X days until freedom, right? X days until the end of the semester, X days until your last final exam. So you have like an end of the semester. I know, especially in my school, you have an end of the semester, but then the final thing you actually do for school is like a few days before that, right? Because you're like, let's say you have class usually on Mondays or Tuesdays, you take your final, it's Tuesday. Well, yeah, the end of the semester isn't over until like that Friday, but for you, that's the end of the semester. So take the early date, the one that actually means you're done, and you should literally have a countdown. Even if you have to, I mean, there should be free apps that do this, and put it like as a widget on your phone, put an actual countdown, put a little whiteboard on your refrigerator and erase the thing every day, set a reminder to do it, because you have too much going on, right? You need to remind yourself. Visualize that any way that you can. A progress bar, there's multiple different apps that can do this, or you can color it in. Be creative with it. Maybe it'll be a little fun activity that you can do. Or you come up with the activity on your, if you're going to implement Pomodoro that I mentioned earlier, come up with a cool thing that you want to do. And I think, that's one thing that will really, really help. And it's very, very simple, seeing the end of the finish line. Also, you need to remind yourself, you're not burned out because you're weak. You're not burned out because you're not good enough. You're not burned out because you don't have what it takes. You're burned out because you've been strong for a very long time. And yeah, even if you're halfway through a quarter even, and you're feeling this, you're talking about 6 weeks or something, that's still a long time. The intensity of what nursing students have to go through, 6 weeks is a long time. If you made it that far, that means you had to have some level of consistency and some level of discipline that is above anything that you have done consistently that long before. Okay? This is a big deal. This is like you're 400 pounds, okay? 500, 600 pounds, and you are used to eating McDonald's 10 times a day, right? And now you're eating salads. That's exactly what it's like going through nursing school. So that's what it is. And in every day, for every meal, every single time, without stopping, without a break, without a cheat day. There is no cheat day in nursing school. So remind yourself that you are burned out, because even when you've had a cheat day, it's not really a cheat day. You're either thinking about it, you're going over things in your head, you're prioritizing the things that you have to do after your little cheat day is over with, you abandon your cheat day because you can't actually afford the cheat day and you need to study anyway, or you forgot something that you needed to do. You could get a couple paragraphs done on a paper, whatever it is. Visualize the finish line and realize that you're burned out because you've been working your ass off. Now, the next one is some bare minimum kind of self-care. This you probably hear a lot about, and you probably hear from your instructors, and then they will literally give you things that go against that same advice. The one thing I would say, no matter what, even if you're going to turn in an assignment late and get a 10% deduction, under no circumstance should you do something like an all-nighter. That is absolutely ridiculous. You should never do something like this. Again, even if something is due at midnight that night. You can try your best to get it done before then, but you do not, under any circumstance, get less than 6 hours of sleep ever. That is, a lot of people, some people ask how I do certain things that I do. And my number one priority actually is to get a good night's sleep. I don't give a shit what's going on. I don't care if there's a test the next day. If I've been doing something and it's 9 p.m. or whatever, and I have to get up at 6 o'clock the next morning, I promise you I'm not looking at a damn flashcard. I'm getting my little happy ass in bed, okay? And I'm waking up the next morning feeling refreshed. Because you're not going to remember that. After a certain point of fatigue, you will not retain that information anyway. You should not be cramming for nursing school exams anyway. Otherwise, you're just going to make straight A's all through nursing school and flunk the NCLEX and not become a nurse while the rest of your friends get their jobs. And you're sitting there in the unemployment line still, right? You can't do that. You have to drink some water, you have to eat something, and you have to sleep. This is basic self-care. That's the end of discussion. In addition to the other things, this should begin to be, especially if you're experiencing burnout because you've been doing all-nighters, have you ever heard yourself say, oh my God, I was up all night studying these flashcards. Every time I hear that, I cringe. And I feel bad for the person because it's not going to work out for you in the long run, even if you get a good score on your exam. And it kind of goes back to the perfection versus progress that I talked about the first tip. There's a certain point where you get to and you're like, okay, I know I'll pass now, but let's do a little better. Whenever you're looking at not getting enough sleep, this is when you stop at okay, I know I'm going to pass. Another little tip that I didn't originally plan out that kind of relates to this, speaking of exams, let's say you have an exam at 9 in the morning that day, 10 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, especially even if it's at 5 p.m. that day. Under no circumstance do you study the day of the exam. It's a weird tip that I've used to get through. Somebody that I know, took an unrelated exam to nursing. It was something that for an insurance certification. And they had failed the tests multiple times. And she was sitting there going through flashcards. It was 10 o'clock at night. We were going somewhere. And I was like, your test is when? Tomorrow at 1 p.m.? How about you do this? Put your flashcards away, put your notes away, and don't look at them, and go take the test. Promise me you're not going to look at them between now and your test time. She passed the exam. Even though they were kind of quizzing each other, there was 2 of them. One of them had already passed the test. They were kind of quizzing each other on stuff. She wasn't getting the answers correct, and that's because burnout. And you're going more past what you should be doing. She didn't even know the answers to basic questions, but she still passed the exam the next morning because she took that little tip. So that's my little personal secret tip. This is a big one. This is the last thing that I'm going to talk about. This is probably the longest episode so far that I have published with this podcast. Okay. You need to write down or speak your why as to why you're doing this. Why exactly you're doing this. Why you're in nursing school. Yeah, obviously you're in nursing school because, I don't know, you want to become a nurse. However, why do you want to become a nurse? Look, if it's just to have enough money to drive around in a Porsche while you live in your mom and dad's basement, whatever. Who cares? There's literally nothing wrong with that. But it needs to be very meaningful to you. And you need to write down exactly what that is. Right? You need to post it somewhere. You need to reflect on it. You need to have it visible at all times, because you have to reconnect to your mission, because it's your fuel when your tank is on empty. At a certain point, you can only go off of so many fumes before you need something else. And that something else a lot of times is just remembering like exactly what it is, okay, that you're doing this for, right? You need to not forget that. It's really as simple as that. You have a big why. Don't scare yourself either. So there's a difference between why you're doing it and what would happen if you didn't finish. That's a negative thing. That could motivate you, but it's more negative emotions while you're already burned out. So I personally don't recommend going the route of, well, what's going to happen if you don't, right? If you don't, then it's going to be you will have wasted all your time. If you don't, yada, yada, yada. I would not go down that, okay? So the final one is affirm your why, write it down, make it visible to you somewhere. Talk with somebody about it. If your why involves other people, sit down and have a conversation with them about it. But kind of reflect on all these tips and tricks today. Hopefully some of it helped you kind of, if you're not going through burnout yet, but you kind of feel yourself going there, or you're already there, especially if you're towards the end of the semester or towards the end of your program, which is very, very common, obviously, because you will have spent a long period of time up till that point. It's a normal part of the process. There's a lot about preventing burnout, and it's a big deal. It's like, oh, you can't get into the burnout phase. But the thing about it is, sometimes you do, and you shouldn't feel guilty. You shouldn't feel bad for being in this kind of circumstance, because it's, in my opinion, it's going to happen to you at some point, and you need to learn how to get past it. If you spend your whole life avoiding difficult things like getting through burnout, you're never going to have the muscles to make it through other things that are also difficult. Okay? So thank you so much for getting motivated with the Earn It podcast today. Go out there and earn it. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow and share this. I am not allowed to share this on campus, or I'm not allowed to put it on other different avenues as I previously was. So share it with other people. There is a link to a form in the description of this podcast if you would like to be on, or just have a question or whatever. Please go ahead and click on that link and put whatever you want in there. You can leave comments on this in Spotify. You can leave comments on it. If you want to do a Q&A or whatever, just go ahead and click the link in the description of this podcast episode. Thanks so much, and have a good one.